Hello, good afternoon to you. The government has been told the regulation of its back-to-work schemes is unlawful and should be scrapped.
Yeah, the ruling by the Court of Appeal followed a challenge brought by an unemployed lorry driver and a university graduate who said they would lose job seekers' allowance if they refused to do unpaid work. The government said the ruling backed its right to run such schemes and it would table new regulations.
Well, we can speak to our industry correspondent, John Moylan, who is at the court for us now. And John, what happens next?
Well, good question. You recall this all started with 21-year-old Kate Riley. She was doing some voluntary work in a museum. She was told she had to go and work in Poundland, unpaid. She contested that that breached her human rights, but also that it was against that being forced to work and be placed on one of these schemes, that the schemes themselves were unlawful because the regulations upon which the schemes were based were unlawful too. Now, she initially lost her case last August, but she appealed, and today we heard from the Court of Appeal, and the court decided that in fact the regulations behind these various work schemes, which hundreds of thousands of people are involved in, that those regulations are indeed unlawful. Well, this is obviously very embarrassing for the government, some saying that it's put the government's whole workfare arrangements into disarray. And after she got the judgment this morning, Kate Riley came out and gave her reaction.
I don't think I'm above working in shops like Poundland. I now work part-time in a supermarket. It's just that I expect to get paid for working. I hope the government will now take this opportunity to rethink its strategy and do something which actually builds on unemployed people's skills and tackles the causes of long-term unemployment. I agree we need to get people back to work, but the best way of doing that is by helping them, not punishing them.
So a setback for the government, certainly. The government today saying that it intends to act as a result of this decision. It's certainly looking to see if it can appeal to the Supreme Court to try and overturn it. But Mark Hoban, the Employment Minister, making it clear this morning that the government would act to try and take away any uncertainty surrounding the schemes.
We are introducing emergency regulations to deal with the court's comments today. I think that's the right thing to do. And we will ensure that people continue to be required to undertake activity which will help them into work. And I think it's exactly the right thing to happen. And I think where the difference is between ourselves and the Court of Appeal is just about how much detail there should be in the regulations.
Now, there's a fair degree of legal uncertainty around all of this morning. The government saying that it intends to try and put a line under all of that by bringing forward fresh regulations so that all of these schemes are indeed compliant with the law. One key and interesting area will be what happens about all of those people who refuse to go on one of these schemes and had their job seekers allowance docked. I mean, in theory, if the regulations were unlawful, the schemes were unlawful, well then any actions involving docking people's benefits was unlawful too. Today, the lawyers representing Kate Riley say the government could be facing big claims in that area. The government itself is saying today it has no intentions of paying back anyone.
OK, John, for the moment, thank you very much.
Well, Nicholas Smith is Head of Economic and Social Affairs at the TUC and joins us from Central London. Good afternoon to you. Thanks for being with us. Do you believe the government should pay all those people who refuse to go on these schemes and had their job seekers allowance docked? Do you think the government should refund them?
We think today's a perfect chance to rethink whether these schemes really have a role in our welfare to work system. We can see that there's across the jobs market now an increasing number of areas where people are being required to undertake work that would otherwise be paid for free. Now, this isn't a fair situation. It doesn't work. The international evidence shows us that these schemes are not effective at getting people back into paid employment, and it also displaces people who are already in jobs who aren't able to get the hours or overtime they would otherwise get. So,
but the court did not say the principle of using voluntary work experience schemes to help those who are out of work. They didn't say that was wrong. They simply said the schemes and the projects that the government has are underpinned by the wrong types of regulation.
Well, I haven't had a chance to look at the ruling, but what we're saying today is that now is time to take a step back and think about whether we're actually providing quality schemes that give people the best chance of moving back into paid work.
Do you believe voluntary work experience schemes are a good way to get people back to work?
Oh, I think absolutely there's a role for voluntary work experience schemes as part of our welfare to work
OK,
system.
so if the government simply gets the regulations right that is underpinning the schemes that they have, then there's no problem?
Well, no, because there's a difference between voluntary work experience schemes, where people might choose to undertake a short period of unpaid work experience, and between requiring people to undertake unpaid work as a condition of their benefits. Now, that second type of scheme is the one that we're really concerned about, where people are less likely to move back into a paid job as a result of taking part in it, where people who are already in work are displaced, can't get additional hours or shifts because unpaid workers are doing their work. And ultimately, people are just punished for being unemployed when the reason that they're out of work is because there aren't enough real paid jobs in the economy. So what we'd like to see today is the government take this chance to recognise that that type of scheme really has no place to play in our welfare to work system, and to look again about the quality and type of programme that are available. Of course, it's right that people who are claiming benefits should be required to take action to move into work. Nobody's arguing against that. We just think they shouldn't be required to take part in schemes that aren't effective and that unfairly penalise them for being unemployed.
Just to outline for us an idea of what you believe, what the TUC believes, is the kind of scheme that makes sense to get people back to work.
Well, we have a very good example of the kind of scheme we need. It was the Future Jobs Fund, and it provided a job guarantee to people who had been long-term unemployed. So at that point, the government stepped in and provided people with a guarantee of paid work for 6 months at the minimum wage. An evaluation that the DWP has recently published, to little fanfare, shows how effective that scheme was. It had extremely high success rates, particularly given it was operating in a recession. It saved the government money in the long term, and although its upfront costs were relatively expensive, at least half of that money was returned to the Exchequer because so many people moved into work and stayed there as a result of taking part in the scheme. Now, these schemes we're hearing about today, the only evidence we have so far appears to be from international studies, and it shows that they just don't work. If anything, requiring someone to work for free reduces their chance of finding real paid work, because it means they've got less time to look for work in the first place.
All right, food for thought for Ian Duncan-Smith of the DWP. Nicola Smith, thanks for joining us. Thank you.
The UN Security Council is